Honorable Men Discord, the new minstrel show. Let's talk about it. All right, before we begin, what is a minstrel show? Before we can talk about the new minstrel show, what is a minstrel show? And so I have it queued up here as per Wikipedia. Okay, the minstrel show, also called minstrelsy, was an American form of theater developed in the early 19th century. The shows were performed by mostly white actors wearing blackface makeup for the purpose of comically portraying racial stereotypes of African Americans. There were also some African American performers and black only minstrel groups that formed and toured. Minstrel shows stereotype blacks as dim witted, lazy, buffoonish, cowardly, superstitious, and happy go lucky. Each show consisted of comic skits, variety acts, dancing, and music performances that depicted people specifically of African descent. And I'm going to leave it there. All right, I'm going to leave it there because what I want to point out, or highlight, I should say, is um, is that it stereotyped blacks as dim-witted, lazy, buffoonish, cowardly, superstitious, and happy-go-lucky. All right, this was a whole presentation. And why am I doing an episode about the new minstrel show? Before I speak on the new minstrel show, I'm doing this episode, one, because this is Black history. I mean, this is the history that we don't oftentimes revisit. We don't often revisit this. We might revisit, especially as far as America is concerned, they'll revisit Martin Luther King 1,000 times over, and they barely do that, right? But the minstrel show is not something that's necessarily revisited, right? I don't know if any of you remember the Jay-Z video from the 444 album, the O.J. Simpson song. He had a caricature created for his video, and it was a caricature of himself. And that caricature was a character that you would see similar in the minstrel shows of that time, right? 19th century, right? But the reason why I decided to do this is because the more I researched the minstrel show, like I'll be honest with you, I've been aware of the minstrel show. It's not something new to me, but as always, and this is the good thing about, for me personally, the good thing about me doing these episodes is I'm educating myself. I'm not going to sit here and act as though all the information given, I knew it ahead of time. No, I'm actually learning this as I go along. Sadly, I'm learning this as I go along because this is just information that, for whatever reason, was never taught to me. And it wasn't something that I found interesting enough to even look into. And I'm just being honest. So the more that I dived into this minstrel show, I was disgusted by what I found. So I have to branch off from the minstrel show and discuss Jim Crow for a second. Now, Jim Crow is another term that, much like the minstrel show, I've heard of Jim Crow. I've heard of Jim Crow in terms of, they said Jim Crow laws back in the 60s. I knew that there was Jim Crow laws. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to put myself out there, and I don't care if it comes across as ridiculous, but for many years, up until I did this video, I had no idea that Jim Crow wasn't an actual person. I'm going to say it again. I'm being honest. This channel is about my, humility. I'm not here to act as though I'm better than, but I am encouraging those like myself that look like me to take that step and educate yourselves. Because I believe the more you educate yourself, the less likely you are to be a living representation of the new minstrel show, excuse me, right? So Jim Crow, as I just said, Jim Crow was not an actual living person, right? And the more that I read and looked into this minstrel show, right? The connection between Jim Crow and the minstrel show is unbelievable. So let me just get right into this, right? There's a lot of things I looked up. So Tom Rice. This is where I really want everyone to just hang on for a moment. And I know sometimes I guess you click on this video and you're just ready to click off for whatever reason, but just hang on for a moment, please. Tom Rice, all right, is the man behind Jim Crow, right? Let me just read this article here, right? Tom Rice, the name Jim Crow is often used to describe the segregation laws, rules, and customs which arose after Reconstruction ended in 1877 and continued until the mid 1960s. How did the name become associated with the black codes, quote unquote black codes, which took away many of the rights which had been granted to black people through the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, right? Going back to this guy, Tom Rice, right? I'm going to skip a few. Now, Tom Rice, first of all, is short for Thomas, right? His name is Thomas Rice. Now, minstrel shows were theatrical. It was a performance. It was white people, uh, primarily white males in blackface, painted lips. You know, they they overemphasize the paint on the lips to mimic black men, right? And they put on a whole show. Music, they came up with jingles, songs. I found out from doing this research that Jingle Bells was created by one of the, I want to say, one of the actors, quote unquote actors from the minstrel show. He created the Jingle Bell song that from Christmas. He's one of the writers or creator of Jingle Bells. But I'm not surprised by that. But let's stay on track here with the minstrel show, right? So Tom Rice, which his full name is Thomas, right, was a struggling actor. He did short solo skits between play scenes at the Park Theater in New York. So this resonates with me because I'm a New Yorker, right? He happened upon a black person. Now this is how the story goes. Like legend says, he's whilst in New York, he happened to stumble upon a black person singing a song. Some accounts say it was an old black enslaved man who walked with difficulty. Others say it was a ragged black stable boy. Whether modeled or on or old man or young boy, we will never know. But we know that in 1828, Rice appeared on stage as Jim Crow, an exaggerated, highly stereotypical black character. Rice, a white man, was one of the first performers to wear blackface makeup. His skin was darkened with burnt cork. His Jim Crow song, he had a song self-titled Jim Crow also, right? And dance routine was an astounding success that took him from Louisville to Cincinnati to Pittsburgh to Philadelphia and finally to New York in 1832. He also performed to great acclaim in London and Dublin. By then, the Jim Crow was a stock character in the minstrel shows, along with counterparts Jim Daddy and Zip Coon. I guess those are other characters that came out from the minstrel show, right? I'm going to put it in layman's term right now. Never mind what I just read, right? This guy, Thomas Dartmouth, aka Daddy Rice, that was his name. Not just Tom Rice. That was a shorter version of it. His full name was Thomas Dartmouth, quote unquote Daddy Rice. Similar to like how Diddy has many AKA names. This guy was named Daddy also, right? Rice. he was an actor that was struggling, and he observed. They haven't confirmed whether it was a black male or a black child, but he was observing them, and whether it was a male or a child, that person was singing, and he was paying attention to their mannerisms and how they act. And as a struggling actor, he decided to create a character inspired by that individual. And initially, the character's name wasn't Jim Crow. I found that in a different article, right? It was a different name. But eventually, as he started to find success, he changed the character and named the character. He changed the character's name, excuse me, and named the character Jim Crow, right? He gained success, and he's like one of the founders, if not the founder, of the whole minstrel show, which became a success. Now, the minstrel show, yes, some will tell you the minstrel show had, there was minstrel shows that were held by all black members, all black cast. But I need you to understand the reason why the black actors and comics, if you will, did the minstrel shows is because they were unable to find any type of work, legitimate work. So they saw, I guess, the success of the minstrel shows done by whites. Now, just imagine how crazy this is. All right. Slavery was abolished in 1865. Hence the donation of the Statue of Liberty in 1865. Right. I need you to, and this is all that I'm gathering from what I've just recently learned. And by all means, those of you that are amateur historians, please elaborate in the comments. All right, please. All right. Slavery was abolished in 1865. We get a French artist who designs the Statue of Liberty. He drafts up a drawing of the Statue of Liberty. He wants to donate it to America to acknowledge the end of slavery, right? In his original draft, if you haven't seen yesterday's episode, well, I'm sorry, right? If you haven't seen yesterday's episode on Dr. Joy DeGruy, the French artist designed the Statue of Liberty with the intent of having the statue holding chains in her hand, in her left hand. She has the torch, and then she has chains at her feet. America did not want that statue to have chains in her hand. He fought with America. America said no. He put the book in Statue of Liberty's hands instead, but he kept the chains. And I don't think the Americans realized it when he shipped it over, that the chains were still at the Statue of Liberty's feet. And if they did know, maybe that's why they decided to put Statue of Liberty on such a high pedestal, because they didn't want people to see that, right? And they weren't going to destroy the donation and the gift just based on chains on the ankle. And I'm just assuming when I say that, but that would make sense because they didn't want the statue to have the chains in her hands. So it would make sense that they say, you know what, we're not going to discard of this donation of such a wonderful statue. We're going to put it on a pillar so high that people can't even see the chains anyway, because it's at the bottom of her feet. I wouldn't put it past the United States for doing that. But I digress, right? That was 1865. So that's the end of slavery. Then as we go into the 19th century, we have segregation, right? Then you have this actor, struggling actor, Thomas Dartmouth, Daddy Rice, creates the character Jim Crow after seeing either a black man or a black child or someone in between. It was a black person. He watches that person, studies them, and creates a character and puts on a black face whilst he's on stage, puts on the makeup over the lips, performs the character, and it becomes a hit. All right? So we went from being enslaved to getting freedom to now having to watch on TV during segregation. During segregation in this country, we had to watch people on TV promote shows mimicking what they wanted to be, wanted to portray is characteristics of us as a people, and those characteristics are what I mentioned before, um, which is dim-witted, lazy, buffoonish, cowardly, superstitious, and happy-go-lucky, right? And this struggling actor, which it almost it's so it sounds like not quite. I know the first thing that came to mind was Joker, because I mean that's the first thing that came to mind. He was a struggling comic, but unlike the fictional character in Joker, he never became a successful comic, right? But this guy became successful. He became successful, and for how many years he did the Jim Crow character, but then he also, through his success, other minstrel shows took place. The black comics or would be actors carried on their own minstrel show, and how insulting that must be, for the only success or jobs you can get is to mimic what white actors are doing, portraying black people. And now you as a black person, and I'm speaking to those black actors that um, partook in the minstrel shows, they had to go out there and carry on in the same buffoonish ways, basically exploiting themselves to be able to be on TV. It was said that these black actors did it only because they didn't have options as far as getting on TV. So they just followed suit. And so they basically clowned themselves for a chance to be on TV. And you say, where are you going with this? Please get to the point. You're dragging this. First of all, bear with me, right? Where am I going with this? Is how similar does that sound to the music industry? You know, I don't know how many artists are out there that have positive messages, right? But then some artists might feel like, you know what, the positive messages don't get signed. It doesn't get exposure. So I'll have to do drill music. I'll have to be a gangster rapper, or so on and so forth. It's the correlation seems similar, right? And that's what I mean by new minstrel show. And the question is, are you viewer, is it possible that you're part of the new minstrel show? And we're not just talking about rap music. You know, that's the segue to what, you know, what I'm talking about in terms of the minstrel show, and how the black actors that portrayed minstrel show were basically doing their own race a disservice. But at that time, they felt like that was the only thing they could do. And it was entertaining, and the white folks at that time loved it. So imagine being a black person performing in theaters of predominantly white crowd, and you're basically degrading yourself for the sake of a paycheck. This was going on after 1865, when blacks were free. So now you have actors performing, degrading themselves and their people and their race for the sake of a living, make a living. Now, I'm just going to brush on Jim Crow. I'm going to go back to Jim Crow again now. Now, keep in mind, Jim Crow is a fictional character. Fictitious, I'm sorry. Jim Crow is a fictitious character, right? That name was now also taken years later to make laws to suppress black people. Let me bring that up. I was just blown away. This whole time I thought Jim Crow was a real white man. Right? So check this out. Jim Crow laws were state and local laws that enforced racial segregation in the United States from the late 19th century until the 1960s. The laws were named after a fictional black character from the minstrel shows. When I read that, and this, as you can see, this is online. This is not made up notes that I have. How did Jim Crow laws work? Segregated public facilities like schools, restaurants. These things I was aware of. And again, I was aware of the term Jim Crow laws, I never knew that Jim Crow laws was after a fictional character, right? It forbade it forbade intermarriage. It required business owners to keep black and white customers separate. Required literacy tests to vote and register to vote. Used grandfather clauses to help white voters. Used signs like whites only in color to enforce racial order. Jim Crow, so it says Jim Crow laws. How was Jim Crow laws? Jim Crow laws impact Jim Crow laws limited African Americans' ability to participate in public and political life. They affected almost every aspect of daily life for black Americans. I could go on and on and on, but I want to stick to the title of the new minstrel show. Oddly enough, again, this topic connects with yesterday's episode with Dr. Joy DeGruy, because again, when blacks talk about the psychological damage that slavery has done, some white Americans feel as though we need to just get over it. Dr. DeGruy covered in her long lecture, which for that episode, it's in the description for that hour-long lecture. Dr. Joy DeGruy, she explained that there was never any intervention after 1865 as far as for the trauma that slavery did. We were just freed, and then segregation began. And in addition to segregation, there was all types of laws and loopholes, which is so similar to today. You know, there's all types of loopholes today. The game has remained the same. All right. Yes, we have a lot of opportunity to make money, more than we ever did, I want to say, than the generation of the past. I'm not going to sit here and act as though we're living in those times. No, we're not living in those times. But as far as the games that are played with loopholes and terms and conditions for you to get through the special doors, there's still special doors. Let's call it special doors for the sake of this episode. There's still special doors that in order to get through those doors, there's a lot of crafty words, and you need a lawyer with you to understand the wording. All right, that's how these special doors are unlocked. These doors are locked, I should say, with special words and criteria to get through those doors. All right, so the game is still played, but it's more strategic. And the reason why I could make that assumption is because when I saw reports about, I'm just going to give an example of, there was a time when I think Diddy and Rick Ross expressed that they were trying to buy an NFL team. Nothing became of that. I remember Rick Ross might have been the last one that mentioned he was trying to buy or have some type of part ownership with the Dolphins. But here's the thing, part ownership and ownership are two different things. When you try to become an owner, that's when there's the loopholes and there's the, you know, those are the special doors. All right. It took Michael Jordan as well known as he has. I'm sorry, as well known as Michael Jordan is, and with all his accomplishments, it seemed like it was like pulling arms and legs for him to become the owner of the Bobcats. All right. Now, if he wanted to move up even further, I think they would give him hell. All right, because in certain sectors of this world, of this country, I should say, there are special doors, and in order to get to those doors, it's going to take more than the dollar amount, because it's not even just about dollar amount. They don't necessarily want you going through those doors. All right, Michael Jordan, he broke through in NASCAR. I believe he has a team, which NASCAR, NASCAR, you trying to get as a black male trying to own a NASCAR and have a team, it's almost impossible, Michael Jordan was able to do it because he's Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan, in all honesty, uh, I don't even want to take it there. Let's just stick with the menstrual show. What I'm trying to tell you is that a lot of the stuff that was taking place in segregation during the segregation time, where it was like, the slaves are free, but there were all types of stipulations to make it almost impossible and tough for them to exercise that freedom. A lot of that stuff still goes on now. But I don't want to digress. The new minstrel show, which is what we're talking about now, the new minstrel show is the show where we partake in it without even being asked to partake in it. All right. First of all, the minstrel show was white males acting as black males in blackface, right? And becoming successful, making money off of that, profiting off of basically making fun of us. All right. To put it in layman's terms, they were making fun of us as black people, and they were making money off of it. They were putting these shows on television. This is a real thing. This is Black history. All right. This is something that black men and women need to sit their children down one day and take them through black history, the real black history, the black history that's uncomfortable to share with your children. This needs to be shown to your children for them to get a better understanding of the mentality of this country, of the people in it, and how through generations it still exists to a degree. Not at the same degree as before, but it's different now. All right? It's different now. It still exists. If you disagree with me, by all means, I'll see you in the comment. But I'm blown away by Jim Crow. The fact that there was laws made after a caricature is all the way insulting. It's like they doubled down on insulting us. They put laws to suppress our freedom after we were freed in 1865. They made it almost impossible for the blacks to succeed. And then you have a white male who became successful, a struggling comic became successful by mocking black men, and he became successful, and then they take that name of a fake character and made laws behind that name. I mean, I don't know what else to tell anyone at this point as far as black history. And then you have other races. I'm sorry. Then you have other races who they, when they're going through something, they try to align themselves with the racism and the torture, the mental torture and physical torture that black people have gone through. First of all, slavery lasted for 200, and I'm going based on what I looked up. All right, so this is not just me. Just slavery lasted. It said for 246 years. So that's 2 centuries and 46 years. So 2 centuries and a couple decades, right? The institution of slavery, it was from 1619 to 1865, right? That was just slavery. And then based on from some of the stuff that I saw from Dr. DeGruy from yesterday's episode, that was just slavery. Then when we were free, then there was segregation. Dr. DeGruy said during segregation is when the lynching started, the hanging of black people. But I don't want to digress. I'm getting so much knowledge from the material that I've been looking up that I'm just blown away. And I hope you're blown away. I hope I'm doing a good job of sparking your minds to want to further your research into this stuff. But the new minstrel show. And what do I mean by the new minstrel show? I just have a little bit to show here from YouTube. Take a look at this.
Minstrel shows, a 19th century form of entertainment in which white people would put on blackface for the purpose of playing idiots and enslaved people. At one point, it was one of the most popular forms of entertainment and kept going from the mid 1800s all the way to the 1970s. Recently, there have been some internet personalities that have had the idea related to them. Often, the defense is that black people can't do minstrel shows, but that's a lie. William Henry Lane and Thomas Dilworth became the first black men to perform minstrel shows. The original Georgia minstrels dominated for a decade alongside Sam Hicks' Slave Troupe and Brat Foot.
So, as I mentioned before, these are the black minstrel show actors that decided to do minstrel shows because they saw the success that the whites were having and because they had nothing else that they can do. It wasn't like they had outlets like we have now. There's no Netflix, there's no Hulu and Tubi and all these other stuff. So when they saw the success of the white actors and comics mocking black people in the minstrel show, they decided to do their minstrel show. So then you have black people putting on blackface. It's absurd. It sounds crazy, but this was our history, folks. This is our history.
There were black people who performed in.
And by all means, I don't know who this guy is, and I've seen his video plenty of times. And the first thing that I told myself when I used to see him pop up on my feed is this guy is too big to be doing this stuff, too muscular to be dancing the way he's dancing. And I get it. That's the reason why he's doing what he's doing, because he's looking for the quote unquote clout and attention so he can build up his followers, and he can have success on social media. But he in fact is part of the new minstrel show, right? Let me continue.
Shows, hoping to capitalize on the racism, no matter the harm or shame it might bring to other black people. So yes, the black people making these videos are doing minstrels. Black people supported them because it was the only way black people could get on stage in America for a long time. But in 2023, we don't need to do that anymore.
Now, obviously, this clip is from 2023. We're in 2025. But I like what he said at the end. The black actors from the minstrel show, they were doing it because they had no other way to get on TV, and they kind of had their hands tied, so to speak, to be able to make an income. But that guy, whatever his name is, obviously he's trying to be funny, trying to be a comic, but the new minstrel show that some of these would-be comics and actors on social media that are doing, my message to them is that you can still be comics, you can still be funny, but you don't need to chuck and jive to amuse people. Because unfortunately, the more people that we have like him doing stuff like that, we all get viewed like that. It just continues to it continues to perpetuate the whole image of we're all the same, and then we all do that. We all chuck and jive, which is why sometimes when you go into certain settings as a black man, you're not taken seriously, because these are the images that are popping up on people's feeds. And so when they see you, they think that you're someone to play with. Let me continue on the other video that I found. Take a look at this.
I want to warn you, first of all, that TikTok might take down this video. But I want to say this. I'm sick and tired of seeing the coonery buffoonery here on TikTok from my black men, from my black women. This is not funny. Like, bro, did you ever think of the ramifications that would happen with you posting content like this? You can post other content. Like, the fact that you don't see yourself as an embarrassment. Or let's talk about the girl, the sister, that all day long, all the videos were about her eating watermelon. We know about the caricatures. We know about the history. Stop it. This is embarrassing. And for y'all who don't have a problem with it, y'all need to reevaluate who you're spending time with and who's getting into your brain and telling you that stuff like this is okay.
I agree. Let me see. Let me see something. So this is part of American history. All right, there he goes again with the watermelon. This is American history, folks. All right? You see it. And the reason why I'm showing you these images on the side, right? Because many of the things that we do on social media, we are perpetuating the new minstrel show. We are promoting, I should say, the new minstrel show. And the problem with trying to capitalize off of today's success on social media because you have some followers, because you're acting like a clown, right, is one day you're going to grow older and you're going to want respect. And people are only going to remember you for your little minstrel show presentations on social media. So my question to those of you who are buffooning around is, do you want to continue to be part of the new minstrel show? And it's funny that the irony about comics, and I've just learned this from observing the comics of the past, or I should say the comics from the generation that I watched when I was growing up. The Jim Carreys. Well, let me stick with Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey was an extremely animated comic. He had his start on in Living Color, and he went on to do many movies, successful movies in Hollywood. The later year of his career, he no longer wanted to do that. He wanted serious roles. As a matter of fact, one of his last movies, it was like a horror movie, completely in a different direction from what he was known for. He was known to act like a fool on camera, a funny fool, but he was known to act as a fool. And the reason why I'm bringing up Jim Carrey as an example is because I want you young folks or whoever's watching that acts anything like this guy over here on the side of me about to eat the watermelon, right? I want you to know there's going to come a point in time, for right now it's funny, but there's going to come a point in time you're going to get older, if you're blessed enough to get older, right? You're going to look back at this and you're going to say, why was I acting like this for the sake of likes and views and for $1? Because there's going to come a point in time where you're going to want to be taken seriously, and unfortunately this stuff is going to remain online. People are going to save it, people are going to remember you for that, and they're going to clown you for it, and you're going to regret doing it. It's no different than my Angel Reese episode and about being intentional with what you put out there in social media, because it's going to come back to haunt you. And it's not me assuming, it's just the way life works. But the truth of life and what's unfortunate about life is, like, we all have to learn on our own. I mean, I'll admit that we all have to learn on our own. I just try to stop those who are willing to listen, if possible. But at the end of the day, we all have to learn on our own. I learned on my own, but I didn't grow up with social media where you're putting things out there that's going to come back to haunt you later. But ask yourself, are you a part of the new minstrel show? Are you doing things today that's affecting your race, your community? Are you putting things out there on social media that's making yourself look less than? And not only yourself, but the community, the black community? Are you putting things like that on social media? Only you could answer that question. That's a personal question for you viewers who are watching this that may either know somebody or you're actually a person that's putting stuff like that on social media. Because this presentation is inspired by Black History Month, but unfortunately, this type of content still carries on today, unfortunately. And the people that are taking part in it are black people. Some of those dances that are out there, not all of them, some of them are actually legit dancers that choreograph dances, and but some of the activity in terms of dancing that's on social media is cooning. It's minstrel material, and it's not helping us at all. And again, we're not going to be young forever. We're going to be older at some point in time and look back at this like I participated in destroying my race. And that's the awareness that I want to bring, aside from the history of it all, like the Jim Crow and the Jim Crow laws. But that's all I have for today. I mean, I really hope something from within this episode resonated with you. And by all means, share it. Share the material. Share this episode. And as always, like, share, subscribe. And I thank you all for tuning in. Take care.